So we have the roll call to order. Starting with you, Brittany. Brittany Morgan.
Here. Yep.
Matt Often.
Here.
Eric.
Here.
Dan.
Here.
And Bruce Spinney is here. Okay. So we have with us tonight a LIP presentation. This is for 116 Upton Street and 59 Pleasant Street. Representing tonight is Clay.
Yeah.
Okay, Clay. Clay Michaels from Eastland. So if you're not familiar with the properties, can you would you mind bringing them up on GIS real quick?
Yep.
Just for a reference point, if you're not that familiar with town. So this basically is the LIP process has been a little bit confused and muddled a little bit as we've been talking about it over the last month with the select board and the meeting ZPA. So generally speaking, LIP should start with the trusts, that initial conversation. We should become familiar with each other and see if it's a fit for a partnership for a 40B development, which of course, the LIP process is starting. And then we can become accustomed with each other. We get familiar with the project because part of the trust's role is the advocacy work and demonstrating to the select board, what some of the requirements are, what we need to do, what we're trying to accomplish as far as affordability is concerned. So it's the first step, and then of course the select board had the sole authority to sign off on it, and goes to DHCD, goes through its merry process, and away it goes down the chain. But technically it should start here. Now that may change in the future, but for right now we're going to go with that. So I did meet with Clay just to kind of go over our format and how we're going to proceed. I did take a look at the presentation, but what I figured we would do is go through what you would go through with the select board, hold our comments for the granular stuff until the end. But what I want to make sure we do is just kind of develop the relationship and make sure if there's something in there that we feel is not important, or if it's missing something that we want to add, that we have that back and forth. So when you do go before the select board and you do the official presentation for the LIP, especially as some people from the neighborhood show up, that we cover all the bases that we can. That's not to say we're going to get to all the bases, but at the very least we get a first crack at it and kind of go through it. So on the screen now, this is Upton Street. So you go through the common down towards Upton, and it's going to be on your right. This was acquired about a year ago? Is it? Came in right at first
it was less than a year ago. This is where the old nail shack used to be.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the other parcel, which everybody should be a little bit more familiar with, is Pleasant Street. This was a little over a year ago now.
Yep.
But this one had some animosity from the neighborhood. So there was a couple parcels that were taken off the back. Those are connected to it. They went to the land trust, I believe, or conservation.
Probably conservation. Yeah.
One of the two, but this is that forward piece of it. So anyways, I'll hand it over to you guys. Now that everybody's a little bit familiar with the two locations, I'll let you go through your presentation and then we'll have a chat afterwards.
Great. Just to clarify, my name's Clay Williams, not Clay Michaels, but either way. I'm a representative from Eastland Partners working in permitting and acquisitions. I have here with me Chad Boardman, our operations manager. And I think before we dive into this presentation, just talking about a little bit of our background with our involvement in Grafton and developing property here. So I'll turn it over to Chad.
For the record, my name's Chad Boardman. I'm the operation manager at Eastland Partners, and about a little over 2 years ago, we had the a site on Wheeler Road, which was actually a 40B permitted, and we purchased that property, and that was, I believe, it was about 31 units, I believe, and 8 affordable. So it was a single-family residential neighborhood that was a 40B. We came to the town and we cleaned up a lot of the permits and continued some of the permits that were outstanding on that particular project. We worked diligently with the building department, the ZBA, the DPW, and several other boards in town to bring that project to fruition. We completed the whole project in a matter of, really, it was about 2 years, so, which was very, very, very fast. It sold out well, and we did everything really good through conservation, again, the building department, the DPW. We had a great relationship, worked through any issues that came up, and we were always open lines of communication. So after we completed that site here, a couple other properties here became available that we looked at, and we thought that there would be a wonderful opportunity to possibly do some workforce housing in the town. This particular 2 projects would be a little different than the last one, because the last one is a single-family neighborhood subdivision. These 2 particular projects would be workforce housing on the apartment community side. And Clay can go into it in a little bit more detail, but unlike the other 8 homes that were done off of Wheeler Road, all of the units that would be proposed at the apartment buildings, even the market rates, count towards your affordability complex of meeting the 10% goals, of course. So that's where it differs a little from there. But again, we do have the over 20 years of experience doing multifamily, 40Bs as well. Recently, we just, in the last year and a half, have gone to the town of Auburn and done 324 apartments that were very similar to what we're proposing here tonight. As well as recently as a couple weeks ago, we're with a joint venture with the town of Uxbridge for a single family, much like Wheeler Road in Uxbridge, and we have a signed lip with them.
What's the development in Auburn?
It's called the Reserve.
The Reserve.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's all, the permits are all good. We haven't started construction yet, but
Okay.
that was a lip program as well, which much success. So we did do one tech review meeting when earlier,
Probably right before the first of the year.
First of the year, with some department heads, DPW, some representatives, some local things. So that we did do that as a first kind of meet and greet. But we're welcome here tonight to start with you guys and potentially start off a great relationship, and look forward to seeing if this is something that the town of Grafton would be really interested in doing a joint kind of venture with the LIP process. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to the Clayton, and he's going to provide tonight a great municipal impact analysis, which a lot of towns, obviously, and there's some people are worried about how this is going to affect the town. So he's done a fantastic study on and analyzing some of the data with the town to proceed with you guys to kind of bring you up to speed with that. So I'll turn it over.
Great, thanks, Chad. So everybody can see this on the screen now. This is my municipal impact analysis presentation for our 2 communities Chad just discussed, Pleasant Commons over on Pleasant Street and Misco Hills over off of Upton Street. So when I say municipal impacts, what are they and how are they measured? You measure these with objective data. You're using numbers from data companies, not from developers. Some of the numbers are easier to understand and measure than others. And in terms of municipal impacts, they're often only discussed in negative terms and in dollars. So that's through increases in school children, traffic and congestion, and strain on municipal services. So our current proposal through these 2 projects is 256 units. Here is a elevation picture of our apartment buildings we are proposing. Our architects, VMY Architects out of Newton, have been in business for a long time. They've built these buildings all over the Commonwealth, so we're not reinventing the wheel here. As Chad said, we're proposing workforce housing, so 25% of our total units will be offered at reduced rents to individuals and families making 80% or less of the median income. Based on the most recent numbers, it was just between $63,000 and $65,000 for 2 people. This slide shows our 1, 2, and 3 bedroom breakdown for both of these projects. Another thing about this presentation, it's meant to act as a standalone document for you to review as much as it is slides for me to present. So feel free to look through this after our presentation. I can make this available to the public if any of the neighbors at home would like to view this. So as we move through, here are our two site plans. So on the left, we have Pleasant Street. We have 4 of these buildings and parking areas with a small leasing building. For Upton Road, we have 6 of those buildings with, again, a small leasing center and associated parking. So there's a lot of data that's coming forward in this presentation. Bear with me, we'll do a Q&A at the end.
How many buildings were there? Can I just see that last slide again?
Yep.
Alright,
So
4
Pleasant
and-
Street, we have 4, and then
6.
Old Upton Street, we have 6.
Thanks.
And they're three stories as
Right.
well.
Okay.
So very suburban in scale.
Yeah.
You know, they're not much taller than your average single-family house.
Yeah. Has this firm done apartments in Newton that you can see from the Pike?
No.
I'm not
No.
sure if in that, but
Okay.
they've done ones very similar in Medfield though.
Okay.
So as we dive into the data, so SAC multiplier stands for school age children. School costs are usually one of the more expensive impacts from housing development, and this company, eConsult Solutions, specializes in data. That's all they do. They have a set of demographic multipliers, which would project how many of a certain type of person would live in any household unit within Massachusetts. These two tables show the different types of multipliers for rental housing that they put forth. When you do the math, multiplying these multipliers by a number of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units, you come up with a projected amount of 73 school-age children. They also have a multifamily multiplier, which is slightly lower because the per bedroom multiplier encompasses all sorts of housing types. So that could be single-family rentals, townhomes, that sort of thing. So when you average these two numbers, you could maybe expect somewhere around 59 school children. In terms of costs, based on the Department of Education Chapter 70 profile, the total cost per pupil in Grafton is just over $13,000. When you subtract Chapter 70 aid from the state, the true cost to the town is just over around $10,000. So multiplying that by the 59 school kids, we have an impact of somewhere around $625,000. We might expect it to be lower since that per bedroom multiplier includes other housing types. And also education is changing. People are going to private school. Homeschooling is becoming more prevalent.
And that 10,000 that's K through 12?
Right. That's for, yeah, exactly.
That seems low, but
That's because we're 6th from the bottom
Right.
in the entire Commonwealth.
Yeah, you do have some of the lowest costs for,
Okay.
And we were number 1 for about a decade and a half.
yeah.
Number
One
one
being
worst?
the bottom.
Yeah.
Worst. Yes.
Number 1 most efficient.
plain gully.
Yeah, efficient.
So this is a graph of your Chapter 70 district profile. That line on the top is your total net student spending compared to your foundation budget. This sort of phenomenon where your actual school spending exceeds your foundation budget is really common in Massachusetts, and that's due to things like special education and other sorts of educational costs.
Unfunded mandates.
Right. So we have 2 traffic studies for each one of these projects that were recently completed. They showed no significant public safety issues, and there's a couple of minor modifications like vegetation trimming and sight distance improvements that could really improve safety here. In terms of roadway maintenance and DPW impacts, since these are professionally managed communities, the community will own and maintain all of the infrastructure. So a town plow truck is never going to go in there. The sewer department is going to be maintaining the sewer infrastructure. That's all handled by the community and the property manager. So here is the Pleasant Street site plan and location. On this slide, I have distances from the nearest police station and fire station. We're about 1.5 miles from the fire station off 122A, and about 1.25 miles from the police station right next to us here at the municipal center. In terms of Upton Street, we have 2 police stations within 1.5 miles. The fire station is about 3/4 mile away down towards the common. Our property manager is Wingate Management. They're a big company. They manage over 20,000 units across the country. They currently manage our apartments that Eastland has owned and built, and they've got a great reputation with this sort of thing. So local preference is one of the benefits of the LIP process. As you guys are probably familiar, it allows the town to set aside up to 70% of the affordable units for a person who meets one of these four categories, either living in town, working for the town, working for a business in town, or having children that already attend the school systems. So in terms of 40B benefits and this 10% threshold that's been discussed a whole bunch with your board and also with the select board, a recent article showed that Grafton is around 335 units away. I know we're waiting for more census data, so that number is subject to a little bit of change. But as Chad said before, since we are proposing rental housing, every single one of these 256 units will count towards your subsidized housing inventory, boosting up to 8.8% without some of the other projects you guys have going on. So the housing production plan is really a way for a town to take their future into their own hands. The requirements and benefits are basically a yearly affordable housing production goal that it becomes met, and you can become appeal proof from future 40Bs, and there are priority for certain state grant funding. The current administration for the state of Massachusetts is really pushing housing production, so they want to incentivize towns like yours to really boost up over that 10%. And like it was discussed at the select board on Tuesday, your annual affordable housing production goal is 39 units, which would be easily attained with these projects. So as we started this process over a year ago, as we were discussing before, both of these projects have a land donation associated with them. We signed a memorandum of agreement with the select board during the Chapter 61 release process. For Pleasant Street, we have just about a 12.5 acre site. We'll be donating somewhere around half of that to either the town, the land trust, or whoever the town sees fit. That is for open space, wildlife passage, and recreation.
Can you put a cemetery in any one of those parcels?
I don't believe so.
Are you sure?
No, I'd have to check.
Okay.
Off of Pleasant Street, there is an existing trail network. One of our neighbors during the select board process actually provided us with this map. And as part of our memorandum of agreement, we agreed to provide a couple of parking spaces and new access to these trails for residents of our communities and other Grafton residents who wish to access these. In terms of Upton Road, we also have a bunch of conservation land that's around us, stuff owned by the Land Trust, the Conservation Commission, and then also some 61 land. We've got the Anderson Crozier Woods and the Prescott Wildlife Sanctuary. Just about 5.5 acres of this parcel will be donated for preserving critical environmental areas, wildlife corridors, and walking trails. So now that we've covered all that, we'll talk about...
No cemeteries over there, though, either.
I don't think so.
Sorry, Chris.
So now that we've covered all of that, we'll go into some of the fiscal positive impacts. So what sort of revenues could the town of Grafton expect from projects like these? The 2020 budget showed that the town collected $2.8 million in excise taxes. The census currently shows 7,034 households for the town. So if you divide that number by the number of households, you have around $400 per household. With 256 new units and 1.5 cars per unit, we're estimating it would be somewhere around $150,000 a year. And as it says here, we've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.75 parking spaces per unit to provide, ample parking for people and their guests while not overbuilding things. In terms of real estate tax revenue, which is by far the largest source of income, these projects will probably be valued somewhere in the neighborhood of $60 million between the two of them. At your current tax rate, the town would look to collect somewhere just over $1 million a year in real estate taxes. Other revenues are water and sewer revenues, and I understand that the Grafton Water Department is not a town department. They are a private company, so the connection fees and revenues to them don't go necessarily directly to the town, but they help improve a system that's, a lot of Grafton residents really benefit from. So based on all these numbers, we'd pay them $390,000 in connection fees and about $100,000 a year.
Can you say that again? Connection fees?
In what sense?
Just say it again for me.
Yeah, so we have $390,000 in connection fees.
$390,000.
So that's for Pleasant Street. For Upton Road, we have $570,000 in connection fees and around $150,000 in yearly revenue.
So the connection fee is not the actual, your cost to connect in. Those are fees to the sewer enterprise funds.
So that water connection fee is based on their most recent fee schedule. So that's
a
directly
one-time
cost.
Right.
Got it.
So
Okay.
that's for system betterments and, things of that nature.
Okay.
So now we get into some of the costs that are associated with these projects. It's standard practice in municipal impact forecasting to sort of discount your costs for the residential share. Since this is a residential community, some of the industry in town does make up tax revenue. Based on a conversation with the assessor, it's about a 90-10 split. So for every 100,000, you have 90,000 coming from residential property taxes and 10,000 from commercial, industrial, and personal taxes. So the per household cost method takes a total budget, which I pulled from the fiscal year 21 budget. I don't think the new numbers have been released yet. Divides it by the total number of households, which is 7,034, to get your per household cost method. Multiply that by the number of new households, the residential share, and the sufficiency factor that I'll talk about here in a sec. So here's the three main ones: police, fire, and DPW. Taking those per household cost methods, adjusting for residential share and efficiencies, the town would expect to spend somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000 a year for new services required. So these efficiency adjustments are basically ways that municipal services react with new housing. There is a company called RKG Associates that does a lot of this municipal impact forecasting, and they have done a statistical analysis of pre and post development budget over a whole bunch of towns. So it's shown that the DPW budget is kind of increases more slowly compared to police and fire. An example would be like a parade. If you have 1,000 people versus 1,200 people, the cost isn't necessarily going to go up. Maybe you need one more police detail, but that doesn't come at a linear cost. So here's our total costs. When you add all of these up, the town could expect to spend somewhere in the neighborhood of $720,000 a year for new services needed. Compared to our revenues, which total up to be 1.4 million. Obviously, like we've said before, the water revenues don't go directly to the town, but they still should be included. And here's our one-time revenues. There are about $365,000 in building permits associated that would go directly towards your town, but that $911,000 goes to the water district. So here's our kind of net revenue. At the end of the day, the town could expect to receive somewhere in the neighborhood of $700,000 a year in net positive revenues associated with these projects. And at the first year, the town would collect, $1.9 million minus that $900,000 for the water department. So lastly, this website, weareapartments.com, forecasts economic impacts from apartments, and with residents going to local businesses, eating at restaurants, and that sort of thing, along with tax revenue, there would be, over $100 million supported by these projects and over 390 jobs. So that concludes my presentation. At this point, I'll open it up to questions from you all, any feedback you may have for me.
So just so we start, I know everybody's taking some notes,
I'll
just
pull up
sort
the
of
site
some
plans.
Yeah, the site plans would be great.
some introductions on our side. I'll start with myself. I'm Bruce Spinney. I'm the chair of the Affordable Housing Trusts. I've got, I don't know, maybe 17 or 18 years of experience in municipal government, planning board along the way through. Eric is,
You've been
I'll
on
let
the
you introduce yourself, actually.
thanks, Bruce. Yeah, I've been on the trust for I think 2 years. I don't know. I started in COVID, and then it's like I don't know when it actually happened. But and then previously, I was also on the finance committee, so I appreciate the numbers, and I am involved in real estate investing privately. So good to meet you guys.
Matt?
So Matt Often, I've been on the trust for about 6 months-ish. I'm the select board rep on the trust. Yeah, and I've been on planning board, finance committee, name it. I've been on the committee, so that's me. Dan?
I'm Dan Kusher. I am a software engineer. I've been on the Affordable Housing Trust for almost 2 years, and I've been on finance committee for almost 4. So still picking some things up, but I'm getting the hang of the this affordable housing stuff. So
Brittany?
I'm Brittany. I'm new to the municipal trusts and boards, but I've been on the trust for a few months now. I'm an architect by trade, registered architect, so I've done multifamily residential before and dealt with developers like yourself. So
Great, excellent.
So, does anybody have anything? I'll mine to the end because I tend to be long-winded. So,
Yeah, it would just I'm not caught up in all the meetings with you guys. It would be good to just get like a quick summary, either Matt or you guys, just like kind of where things are at with the lip and all that.
So
Yeah, why don't
we
you guys-
we had submitted to be on the previous select board meeting for the first of the year, and I guess you all figured you'd have the meeting on the 8th to discuss the LIP process. So we haven't made our formal presentation to
Okay.
the select board yet. So we're at step one of this whole process.
Okay. And oh, go ahead, Matt.
No, just in it, our process has developers meeting with the housing trust first. That's kind of the process. This is where they start. In order for the housing trust to basically evaluate the conceptual designs and things like this, to be able to then feed the select board with its input in terms of what the housing trust's priorities might be for potential negotiations with the developer.
Yeah, go ahead. Dan.
Well, I didn't have anything.
Oh, I thought I saw you.
Oh no.
And you guys already have like the deeds on the properties, the proposed properties.
They're under purchase and sale agreements.
Okay. All right. Got it.
And at the end of the last year, we did have a tech review. When we initially reached out to, I think, the town planner or maybe the town manager, the first response is like what we did the last time was when we came to Wheeler was like, well, let's meet everybody at a tech review. So we did have a Zoom call because it was still COVID, and so we kind of introduced ourselves. Kind of gave a presentation, not on the municipal, but the site aspect itself. We weren't jamming four buildings, and with the on Pleasant Street, we weren't proposing 6 buildings all jammed together, and tried to strategically see what be conscious of the neighborhood as well as donating how much land we could donate away at the same time under the 60 BB, and that's where we came up with some of these conceptuals. At the time, we had some concerns with, the chief of police had some concerns about the traffic and whatnot and speeding and things like that. So we took everybody's general 30,000 foot kind of flyover feel at that meeting. So this would probably be our first night of kind of introducing ourselves for the most part, really, with the town here. So.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, not to like hog the mic, but just in general, like the presentation was super helpful. We're on the Affordable Housing Trust, so I think are generally more friendly to stuff like this because our mission is to promote affordable housing, and that's what you guys are doing. And the presentation like kind of preempts a lot of the same arguments we hear every single time to oppose developments. Traffic, cost of school age children. So really good to see the data. Can see how, you guys have definitely done this before with other municipalities. So I'll stop talking though.
Brittany, did you have some questions?
yeah, could we go to the unit count again? Just curious. Okay. My questions are always going to be more like aesthetic if that's like your vision for it because you have that image up there, but it's not really for this meeting.
Yeah, I mean, these are the elevations. One change we have made is we put hip roofs on the buildings, so it kind of brought the scale of that overall roof line down. These buildings are just a typical shed as they are now.
Yeah, and then what's the siding? I guess for durability purposes.
It would be, vinyl siding with a mixture of, regular reveal and some kind of mock cedar shakes as well, just to kind of break up that front facade.
Okay. Not a huge fan of vinyl. I just don't think it holds up well, but I get like the cost perspective on it.
And these buildings also actually have, exterior walkout units, so there's no elevators in these buildings. So the portico area with the pergola kind of, that area in there is actually a walk up staircase to access all the units. So there's not really a hall corridor per se, like an apartment,
Yep.
apartment building you might think of. It's kind of a little hybrid there, because you enter your apartments from actually the outside. So
Yeah, I would say it from this view that you have this perspective. I wouldn't show this view because it looks like one long building, and I think it's two buildings, right? I think it's going to be perceived in a bad way that it seems like a very long building. I would show like more of an actual true elevation.
sure, yeah,
to get-
Thank you.
sure, no problem. And I think these buildings are between 24 units
Yeah,
and
so-
28 units, I believe,
Right.
if they're walkouts, I believe.
Yeah, I just foresee people like jumping on that, and it's not the case.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
Brittany, is that all you got for right now?
Yeah, do you have ADA units? I'm assuming.
Right. So we'll have each one of these will have either 8 or 10 ground floor units. So we'll be able to meet the ADA requirements under the Chapter 40B law. Yeah, those are
Okay.
required in any 40B.
Just for reference, we'll get a copy of this and make sure they're sent.
Yeah.
I did not get them in the packet, but we'll send them to everybody. So, one of the things that I would like the trust to do in participating in this process is to go through it, and like Brittany had mentioned, something that's going to show a little bit better for people. That's what we should be helping with. Just to make sure we're connecting, or make sure we're following up on everything. So a couple of things that were in there that Eric didn't talk about. There's a lot of granular topics in there.
Right.
I think for the select board, you'd be okay with it. It's hard to follow if somebody were a layperson in the audience. And it's inviting a lot of questions, and typically when it invites a lot of questions, that's when problems arise. But I think for this audience here, who has a lot more understanding of it. So we did have a couple other studies in the past on projects. One wasn't as empirical as you guys have provided, but that was when we were looking at the 317 units over on Pine Street. I think Dave Robbins was the one that kind of put all this stuff together. Very similar approach, the actual number or demand on local services is far outpaced by the assessed value of the property and the revenue that produces just on a annual basis. And the other one was Sotir. When I was on the board, when that LIP process came through, I had asked him to produce a report because it was originally going to be townhouses, and just the difference in perspective to demand on services, townhouses and single family homes compared to apartments is greatly different. So from an economic development standpoint, which should be something that the select board pay a lot of attention to, and certainly people in the audience, it's a nice way to approach it. But I think you should add on the sewer piece. Sewer's outrageous. Water connection fees are outrageous. Now we have enterprise accounts is what the sewer is. So they're different, but there's a lot of shared services there. And they also built a pretty sizable expansion to the facility, which is offset, of course, by ratepayers. You're adding more ratepayers into the pool, which should have a positive effect on people's individual sewer bills, which the way they scaled everything, it hit people pretty hard. And while people like to say they're not taxes, they are. Those people who are on those services cannot go on septic like some of us who have single family homes. And it's a meaningful impact. Some people pay a couple $100 more a year on their sewer bill. Some people a lot more. And for the prices you're paying for hookup, which doesn't cost them that money. That money goes into a pool, and so we share some of the funds for our DPW coordinator, Paul Canoyer, who's absolutely brilliant, and we wouldn't want to let him go, but we share some of the money that goes into sewer. So there is a connection there, and when we do capital items and things of that nature, sewer has typically been considered for expending their funds and stuff that both the municipal side and the sewer actually use. So there's a lot of cross pollination there. Water is its own thing, but still, it's relevant. So when they sink a new well in, and they come up with it, it goes on to the ratepayers. So if you could add a little bit of that to it,
Okay.
because that's relatively new, and it should be something that people should be aware of, because it is a substantive amount of money.
Yeah. Yeah, the when you're showing those figures for the like the water hookup, that stuff, was that specifically just for water, or were you combining water and sewer?
So those connection fees were just for water.
Okay.
The revenue takes into account the yearly sewer fees, per the Title V estimates per bedroom. That's what those numbers are based off of.
Okay.
But yeah, adding in sewer connection fees, I can definitely do.
Water does it all. So, like, the commercial hookup fees are outrageous as well. Just to throw a meter on. But it's not something that we can go back to the water district and say, can we get some relief here? We really want to see this. I mean, it's certainly behoove of the select board to ask, of course, but it's not something typically that's ever been done. You should make everybody cognizant of the underlying zoning that's there. Most
Okay.
people will know, but they're going to want to see the density change from what they can have by right and what you're putting in there.
Okay.
To some degree, because somebody's probably going to ask at a certain point. And parking. So you guys are familiar with a lot of these. You built a lot of these. Parking and traffic are the thing that drive people mad.
Yeah.
Typically because, as you know, you've been through this rigmarole before, it's something that they can harp on.
Absolutely.
And it has
yeah.
teeth on a local level. So if you could provide some of the different places that you've actually built, and especially if they've been up and running for a couple of years and they're fully occupied, or 90%, whatever your metric is. So yeah, we built 150 units here 3 years ago. We have yet to have a traffic concern at 1.75, because I can hear people arguing in this municipal center about 1.75 being enough.
Right.
Right, yeah.
But that's a very real thing. So, and I know you're talking with, our people here, but when you start to get in front of the select board and things like that, giving a real world citation would be good.
Sure.
You're very granular anyway, so it should, people will be paying attention.
Sure.
I'm with, I think everybody here, it's a good slideshow.
Yeah.
The economic impact is fantastic, because it's not an angle that most people take.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not something particularly we should be interested on this, but if the end goal is to getting this approved and getting it to the next level, and I'm advocating for it, we need to pull out any stops that we can to get it to happen.
Absolutely.
You PNSs, can you provide us copies of those?
Yeah, they're on public record. They were through the Chapter 61 process. Yeah, so we could send those over to you.
All right, just for convenience sake.
Yeah.
The timeline on them?
The Pleasant Street one, I believe we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 18 months left. The Upton Street one is a little bit closer.
And sewer down on Upton Street, how are you pulling that in?
So currently we
Can
would
you go
be,
to the, can you go to the,
sure.
either GIS or,
Yeah, if you could pull up GIS, you could zoom out. Or should you want me to do it 'cause I'm the presenter?
I got it.
Okay.
oh, and I apologize for getting your name wrong.
That's okay. Yeah, Brett Michaels isn't my dad.
We
but
call
that'd be
him
cool,
worse.
right? Yeah.
So I'm gonna stop share just so I can log in.
Yeah, sure.
I can actually pull up the sewer.
So just from some historical reference, and Matt can attest to this, the Pleasant Street was rather unpleasant, no pun intended,
Yeah, right.
process. I mean, you can expect the same vitriol there, when you go through a process. I mean, if they had told people that this was being presented for what was going on there while they were in that process, I think it would have gotten a heck of a lot worse. That not to say that this is the natural course of things. and we've
Absolutely,
dealt with
yeah.
it before.
Yeah.
The other street has a burnt out building. It's, unused parcels.
Without a lot of neighbors either.
Yeah.
Right.
Some multifamily, still some older multifamily kind of about it,
Well,
so.
It's,
Right down the
it's,
street.
Nothing but apartment
Yeah.
buildings and
Right.
complexes
And it's-
down Upton Street.
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
located on the edge of town. We've got near direct access to a state numbered route,
So Pleasant Street, I know you get
Yep.
the forced coming from
Right.
Peters Estate, so that sewer there is going to be fine. I'm just wondering where you're for Upton Street.
That one's gonna be that'd be a force main. I think it's about 800 feet, and then the water would also be about another 800 feet as well.
Okay, so we're
So I believe it comes off of Pigeon Hill Road. Right. Yes, you have the sewer layer turned on, right? Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. So we propose to run it, shortly over 140 and then down through Upton Street to connect into the project.
okay. Okay, and the reason why I bring this up is because we used an overlay up the hill on Upton Street, which was the same, the village mixed use, which would allow for the density that this is going to build or looking to permit. The difference being that if we were to look at that corridor and what's existing there now, it would be, I think, not an easy sell, but it would be something that we could probably put before the town that would be palatable to extend that village mixed use district down. If this particular project is looking at bringing sewer down for its benefit anyways, there's a lot of lands in there, and having spoken with some of the people who own that land, having more uses out of it would be good, because the railroad goes behind it, which hinders a lot of people from getting access to 140, and also to bring over sewer and things of that nature, because when you cross a railroad, it's a pretty elaborate process. But seeing that we have the crossings there, having sewer going down a little bit further would probably provide some opportunity for development. And you can believe the numbers or not for the revenue stream, they are net positive for the town. And we're up in the 90% residential. These are true ways for the town to benefit, because single family houses in these areas do not. Especially, if we were looking at the village mixed use, we can look at the density requirements and we can ask for a little bit more than the 10% that's required now too. So it might be something that we look at if we reach a dead end with the ZBA or things of that nature, to just go to town meeting, which has been friendly for 40B for some time now. And I think the expansion of these zones, especially the local business owners in the area and the people utilizing the common, it's a natural fit. And then Pigeon Hill probably has 8 different apartment complexes already along it. At a certain point, that's where it went. Anyways, does anybody else have anything?
And just on the same note of the utilities, I believe we talked to DPW and the water company. I believe there's still plenty of water pressure up in that vicinity, and the sewer capacity is okay as well.
Okay.
Just on the, what's in it for you guys side, is this, is it like a buy and hold? Do you exit after?
No, we're actually gonna hold this.
Okay,
So,
I know you referenced Wingate, which I've
yeah,
heard of.
they manage our entities.
Yeah, they're the PM.
Yeah, our portfolio. It'll be another project of all in-house portfolios.
Okay.
We
Have
a
the,
little bit more intimate connection with the town and stuff being here.
yep, and all the other like similar projects you've done with other towns, you're still holding?
Flip, we hold. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is it like a syndication, or how do you guys?
Well, I shouldn't say that. Apartment communities, we hold subdivisions like we.
Yeah, I
also-
mean, yeah, you're not
And
renting
Westbrook.
out single families like
West-
Blackstone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sweet.
Okay. And then is it like a syndication? I mean, you guys don't have to get into this, but I'm just kind of
No,
curious
it's
on
a
the.
private
Yeah.
entity.
Okay.
Self-financed.
Okay.
How do you guys decide the 1, 2, 3 bedroom mix?
It's based on the breakdown of those buildings, and then obviously there are requirements set forth through the state for Chapter 40B.
Okay.
With a 10% minimum for 3-bedroom units. And then, the way the buildings are set out, the floor plans are pre-existing. So that's kind of how those come together.
Got it.
And just to dovetail the conversation that happened on the 8th, local preference is something that has been attached to some of these projects. Typically, most Grafton residents, their incomes outpace it. So, haven't had that much success in placement. We send everything off to CHAPA to handle. These are apartment buildings, so you're going to be working with staff and THCD to cover up the monitoring service.
Sure.
Yep.
Yep.
But the single family stuff is fire and forget. The apartment stuff is actively monitoring. So when you go down, 3 or 4 years out, somebody's still going to be participating and make sure that those affordable units remain affordable. Make sure there's people in them.
Absolutely.
They don't go away, so to speak.
Just want to bring up one more detail in regards to usually, the residents and things about traffic concerns. We actually spent the money up front to actually do the traffic studies ahead of time. I know the LIP process sometimes some developers might come in here and I'm going to submit that at the ZBA level. We went ahead and spent the money to already do the studies on both of those areas, so we have a good idea of what those current what might happen there. Sometimes the selectmen might be a little hesitant to say, well, geez,
Yeah.
I don't want to get caught in a blind spot without having it, but we do have those. I think they're about 95% complete for now. So.
So, procedurally speaking, on our side, you watched the meeting on the 8th, right?
Right.
I would expect that the select board and Matt can reference it a little bit more himself, but I'd expect they're going to want to see a pro forma. I know you would provide one to the ZBA.
Yeah. So
That's probably something that's going to be.
that's part of the LIP application. So there is the source uses, which is construction budget, and then operating management expenses compared to, rents. That's part of the application that would be submitted.
It's not typically something, my tenure on the board, that was actually looked at.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Through the 40B process, it all gets audited. We have limitations on profit we can make, and I think it was in Upton. It was either Pulte or Toll, one of the bigger developers. Ended
that's
up
us.
going over,
That's us.
and they write a check to the town.
Well, they didn't write the check. We had to go chase it.
Yeah,
chase it,
right,
yeah.
right.
Yeah, we chased it over a course of a couple of years. Yeah, I mean, a lot of that minutia, people don't quite get that there is a state, bureaucracy that handles a lot of those things, excess profits and things.
Yeah.
I mean, what I've found is, especially the larger companies, there's too many ways to hide the things, so they end up going away anyways. But I think at the point we're at now, I think Chris can speak to it, but we're confident that we're going to be in safe harbor as you're approaching your application status, and we should have enough units to have 2 years of safe harbor. So that was something that was discussed, but
Right.
it went kind of back and forth, and nobody really knew. But I'm fairly confident that we'll be in safe harbor. I think Chris is as well. As much as we're going to dog him to, bring somebody from DHCD here and say, yes, you are this. So it has ramifications on the process here. There are 2 other big projects that are going on that look like they're going to come to fruition. One is that red spot there where this overlay district was kind of designed for, our old DPW building. That's about 120 units that will probably be all apartments and all affordable. And then the 317 units on Pine Street and the 40 units on Prentice.
Not all affordable though at Upton. They'll count, but not, in practice they will not be affordable.
No, yeah. What I'm saying is,
Adds the inventory.
Yeah.
that's enough to put us at the 10% point, which changes the paradigm as far as what we're talking about here. Which you heard a lot of that on the 8th as well.
Right.
From the trust perspective, I think promoting 40B growth and actual affordability, apartments is the way to do it. But I'm sorry, Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I just had a question for you guys. I mean, how do you look at that where you might, it's not going to necessarily be the same 40B situation if we're in safe harbor?
I mean, I think opinions on 40B have changed. I think previously it was looked at, we hit 10%, okay, we're done. We're going to say no to everybody. And I think, based on all the planning you guys have done with your housing production plan and master plan and economic development, we need housing.
Yeah.
The governor's saying we need 200,000 units in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
So it gives you more of a say. If we came in and said, hey, we want to build a 6-story building over here on this postage stamp, you'd
Yeah.
say, get out of here, you're crazy.
Yeah.
So that's why we're coming to the, to
Yep.
the select board first through the LIP process.
Yeah.
Be open and honest about what we're proposing. If you think it's a good idea or not, and we'll go from there.
That's good.
Yeah, that 10% is probably gonna change to 20%.
Right.
Yeah.
At current how everything's going right now.
Right.
It very
So
well.
hard, it's so hard to, even permit some of these projects.
Yeah.
So did you guys have, conditions, with the reserve, development up in Auburn, and what were they?
So for that project, when we approached the select board, we asked them to come up with some sort of a wish list,
Yeah.
of things that we could potentially do in town.
Oh,
And obviously, we can't do everything, but
No, I'd
we
be interested in kind of, what was on the wish list, and then,
Yeah.
what was the process to get to something that was gonna be feasible for you guys and
Right.
still enough benefit for the town?
Yeah, one thing we did at that was we were going to make a water connection to the city of Worcester. They have some issues with their water supply wells getting contaminated by like spills on the highway and excess salt. So we are going to do the excavation work to lay about 3,000 feet of pipe for them. That was one of the things, and then a couple other smaller things in town.
Okay.
But it basically is discussed with the select board, and then it got memorialized in our conditions at the ZBA permit with
Okay.
our comprehensive permit.
and was Auburn at Safe Harbor?
No. So with that project, with the reserve, and they have two other senior housing 40Bs, that'll boost them over 10%, but currently they're not, no.
And there are communities that actively pursue it. Lincoln just proposed a big apartment complex to keep themselves affordable enough to surpass the whatever units they were adding in their regular inventory per year. My best guess is GSX, Pine Street, and Prentice are all fully affordable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
According to the ratio, we have about 6 or 7 years. But that's with our old master plan, with the new MBTA rules that are coming out and the open space we have over there, just considering the Russell property at 15 an acre, with no affordability component, you could add another 1,000 units, in that area, and just blow away what our master plan is for build out now. So I don't think those densities were, 20 years ago when they did the thing. They really are accounting for those type of things. So that moving goalpost for that 10% is still something we should be cognizant of. And like, from my perspective, from the trust to the select board, we kind of positioned ourselves like 10 years ago to try to take advantage of the economic opportunities that are happening now. If we wait 10 years to say, okay, well, when we get out of 10% in 10 years, hopefully somebody's want to come into Grafton with the historic rates of interest and the booming market are going to build, 100 units and, propose these type of projects. I couldn't tell you that they were going to do that in 10 years because they weren't 10 years ago.
Right.
So now it's the time to take advantage of it. They're economic windfalls. And I'm looking at you, Matt, because you're going to have to go talk to those people.
Yeah, no, I get it. Look, the game now is, get into Safe Harbor and then just plan to stay in it, comfortably.
But skinning the cat another way is something that we have experience with town. We've been actively pursuing it, and like town meeting overwhelmingly supported that village mixed use to try to take vacant property that we couldn't do anything really with and move it into something. And it means something for you down there because, town meeting says it. You go before the planning board, not ZBA, which is an entirely different experience. And you're in a special permit process, which is intended to be granted. It gives you a lot more flexibility, from design perspectives, from, how you can reasonably anticipate how you're gonna get through the town.
It's an interesting idea that, I think that, the Robinson property, which is a little further down on 140 on the other side,
Same thing.
they're looking to develop that as well.
Yep.
But it would be a very similar kind of dynamics to this.
Especially as sewers trailing down there. So, and
Yeah.
that's not something would throw your timeline considerably off. We have 2 town meetings a year. They're fairly light attendance. It's especially that parcel. You don't have a lot of neighborhood there. And you have a lot of people with property there that would like to see the benefit of being able to do something more with it. And it's, it's a pass-through part of town.
Yeah.
Right.
Real easy. So if we propose something like that, the village makes use of it up there. It flew through. It was put together in what, four months or so, and done. You'll be stuck in ZBA in this town for about 8 months. Or what did they tell us the average was? I was wrong, because I
I thought
too
they said
much.
9 months.
Yeah, 9 months, including the prep time and walk-up time, and it's dealing with the select board and dealing with us and all that stuff. So if that 9 months turns into a year pretty quick. Anyways, do you have anything more for us?
I think I really appreciate all
No,
the input
absolutely
and
not.
feedback.
Yeah.
Thanks for inviting
Any
us.
questions that come up, obviously, we have our contact information. Happy to answer anything that you guys think about. Geez, I should have said that, or ask that. We're
Right.
always here. Well,
Yeah.
easy to answer anything.
Maybe
So-
from other members who weren't here today too.
And between Matt and I, we'll stay in contact with the select board, so when it comes time, we can make sure we have people in the audience, make sure we have people that can ask the questions. Your ratios for unit design comes right down from the state, basically.
Right.
So it's really easy to say, well, yeah, this is why we have that mix.
I would definitely echo Brittany's comments.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
About the actual visuals.
I can
Yeah.
switch that up.
I think for a place like Pleasant Street, it would be great if you had a sort of a street view. What's it going to look like as I'm driving by? Because that's not going to fly.
Okay. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thanks, guys.
Well, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Thanks
Nice
a
to
lot.
formally
Good
meet
night.
everybody. Good to see you, Chris.
For the trust members, make sure that as we're engaging in email going back and forth for something like this, it'd be easily considered deliberation. So if you want, channel all the comments through Chris.
Chris? All right, cool. All right, will do.
Well, he's on hold with DHCD figuring out if we have affordable units in town.
Right.
Everyone's friendly helper.
Yes.
Planner 101, right?
You actually have to get him to sign it in blood.
Start charging overtime.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Good night.
Okay. All right. So, has everybody reviewed the meeting on the 8th this week with the select board? I know Eric hasn't. Dan, you watched it.
I got most of it.
All right. Chris lived it. Matt lived it. I watched it. Brittany, if you haven't, we really should. So it's going to provide some insight into strategy from the trust perspective. As we talk about 25 Worcester Street, as we talk about GSX, which was the item that I put on there. So GSX, without an opportunity to go after the tip, basically said, well, we'll take more cash up front in the grant. Lo and behold, the cash up front was pretty much our entire retained savings is what they were looking for. So about 1.8 million. So the 900K that we originally proposed plus an additional, and they would not be seeking a TIF, which of course they can't get anyways. I think between Evan and I, we've exhausted all of the typical municipal ways to offset the costs. I did speak with Providence Town, who had a bylaw that's kind of designed to allow them to provide direct subsidies from the municipality to actual 40B developments, but it wasn't really, it wouldn't really fly here. It was more for like your Zagonis, your GHA type of things. It wasn't, something that I think we could get past here because there wasn't a lot of overlapping. I'm struggling for the word for it, but the way they zone there, it didn't really overlap with us. So the only thing that I could think of, which is something that GSX got on Pine Street, was permit relief. So they cut the permit fees in half, I believe, for Pine Street. And then, of course, the third-party review gets passed on. So that would be substantial up at GSX. I think if you discount out from their kind of pro forma they sent us what their permit fees were and what they would have to be obliged to pay for the third-party review, there's probably about 300K there that could either be waived or we could look to do something with. They have the same, water hookup fees and stuff like that. We can't really touch that, so there's no way to do it. I'm still of the mindset that it's a good investment for us, but if it's solely burdened on us, I think we should be asking for a little bit more to get a couple of 3-bedroom units out of it that are affordable, something that brings it more in line with the 40B process. No, we can't require them to do it, but if we're in the negotiation process for that type of capital, I think we should make it structured a little bit more like, the needs. And following the housing production plan, 3-bedroom needs are, much higher than 1 or 2 bedrooms. So I think they would look at those type of things. They have some parking restrictions there that are fumbling their unit count and how high they can go with the unit count. The economics didn't work for the underground garage, which is why you saw the drawback from the 130 something units to 123. So they're struggling, and I think the ratio is 1.7. I think that's what it is. The one thing I mentioned to GSX when I last spoke with them is in the RFP, they're trying to save that barn for some commercial application. Like there's some type of historical, restriction on it. That white barn as you pass the inn right before or right after the train tracks.
So just to clarify, there's no historical restriction, but it was part of the RFP that that was one of the asks that the RFP would rate more highly, and so it is
So
a
it's
consideration.
it's something that they want to see. I believe the select board have the authority to manipulate that, but I haven't. I just kind of uncovered it today. But if that barn were to come down and they were able to put another 30 parking spaces, they could increase their unit count there, and we could see some. They were to add 12. We could ask them, well, we want those to be 3 bedrooms, and we want 4 of those to be the 4 affordable units that we are subsidizing with our money. Just something to give us a little bit more control of the destiny, because originally the thought process was we give 900, they get a TIF. We meet the Grafton halfway, and they get to their the 10% marker. I think after viewing the meeting on the 8th and the appetites that are out there and the kind of confusion of where we're actually at and no real strategy for the next 10 years that I think anybody's going to coalesce around in the immediate future while these projects are before us, I'd be concerned that people are starting to look at like the project down the street, that we just reviewed, or the Snow Road, and say, well, why are we doing this when we can, pick and choose type of things, because GSX wasn't really talked about on Tuesday. And the reason why I like GSX for us to put our money into it is it's a special permit process. You're dealing with the planning board and you're dealing with a town that specifically said, we want to see this density here, and we want it so much that we're going to put an overlay there. So we want to see this happen at this particular location. So as far as like spending our money on something that we're going to see actually get built over the next 3 or 4 years, I think bang for the buck is a bad way to put it, but it's still a good place for us to put our dollars, especially the dollars that have been sitting there for a long time. So I don't see, one more second. So like in the LIP process, some individuals there talked about using our money as incentive to get these developers in to build the projects that they're talking about. They're building them anyways. And as you heard him say, there was a laundry list of things or wish list of things that they were doing for Auburn. Those are the type of things that are probably going to be put on the table as we, go through the LIP process here. They're not going to need our money to do that. What I'm not confident is that these projects will actually materialize and get built. So if we're going to spend a big heap of our money on a particular project, I want some understanding that it's actually going to happen. And it's something we can actually look at. And we still need to hang our hats on it. We still need to make sure that everybody knows that this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, and this is the benefits to the town. Matt?
Yeah, just a couple comments. On the permit fees, we did do a substantial discount. But then we also said the as-built value, is we would basically loop back, and, you know, the initial permits and fees and whatnot are based on their estimate, construction estimates and whatnot. Often during the construction process, you know, they end up spending a lot more money, so we'll go back later on and recoup any additional permitting fees that we need for that. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that.
I think that the 60 million it triggers, right?
I'm not sure what the trigger is, but basically whatever their initial valuation is that they're basing the permits on, they're gonna go back and look at that valuation when it's excuse me, finished, to make sure we can capture any additional value that was excuse me, created during the process. The only other thing is just the that dairy barn on the Upton Street property. I think, you know, the town did put in that zone with the intention of a mixed-use development, but part of that is a commercial aspect of it, and part of that commercial aspect of it is that barn area is mentioned specifically in the RFP. So I just I'm not sure, without some more discussion, that I'd be in favor of just asking them to knock it down and build more, if that's going to limit their ability to put some commercial element into the development. So you know, we just need more discussion on that, I guess, if that's something we want to pursue.
Worcester Street is not in the overlay, right?
It's not going in the overlay either. I know how you make that overlay redistricting fail is plug it into 25 Worcester Street and watch 80 people from that neighborhood show up and say no, because how it looks to me now is 25 Worcester Street, although it's in our portfolio, is not gonna have the same type of density that we were originally talking about there, or the same impacts, because by the time we get to 25 Worcester Street with these other projects in the mix and being in safe harbor, I would say we have virtually no chance of getting that through a variance process.
Yeah.
What you can do, of course, is go with the R20, which it's currently in, and do some duplexes. But as far as impact on, you know, producing affordable units in town, the property values there, it's going to cover what a developer is going to need to go in and put, you know, 8 2-packs in there and have 2 of them be affordable, or 3. You can certainly subsidize that, because in the land value with a permit and tail is going to be worth $600,000 or $700,000. And if we're just donating the land as part of that agreement, you can probably find a local developer or even somebody in the area who's going to go in and put up those houses, and there'll be plenty of profit left for them. But you know, building a 48-unit complex or you know, something in the assisted living side or something that we were thinking about, I think is going to be exceedingly difficult, judging from that conversation that we were having. So,
What?
Brittany, please.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So they're asking for that 1.8 up front?
No. So it's basically scheduled over a couple of years. The original 900, what we pledged for the first year, is a lot of the soft costs through the permitting phase. And then once the permitting phase is over and they're aligning, it'll be some of the operational money that would get them between financing gaps.
And I know we talked about it before, but if they end up not actually going through and building it, what do we get out of it?
We get the
if
land.
we've already put money into it? The land?
Yep. Yeah, we
And the
get-
land's valued at what?
It sold for 800.
I thought it was
Okay.
675.
So we wouldn't go
75.
over that threshold until we're like pretty sure that
Yes.
it's gonna actually build.
I'm confident in the original proposal that, you know, we kind of had, as far as the schedule of events were concerned. I have a couple concerns that, for the monitoring and stuff like that, but have they rectified that for Pine Street? I know you were
Sorry?
chasing him for that. There's submittals to DHCD for Pine Street for the monitoring and stuff. They said that they've done that.
I'll have to circle back and
Okay.
check, yeah.
Anyways, that wasn't part of the grant proposal, and it needed to make its way in there. But they
Okay.
were fine with that. If, like I said before, though, if the money's all ours, I think we should take another quick bite at the apple and try to get some 3-bedroom units into place.
I agree with that too, and I'd even like to look at the unit mix too, because they had some units in there that aren't technically 1 bedrooms. It's
I
a
think-
weird type of unit.
I think they're, the architectural they're point there now, I think they were just trying to cram as much in there as possible and then get it through the
Yeah.
original technical piece of it. I mean, we can reach out to the planning board and have a meeting with them and see what their appetite is for, the parking restrictions, to see if we can kind of work with them and say, hey, we're trying to contribute, we want this to happen. The 3-bedroom stuff, can you work with us on the ratio, as far as parking demand? I mean, it's a common, I know parking is very stressed up there, but there are, plenty of opportunities for people who are showing up on a weekends or a party or something off that's gonna require more than their unit count, that they be able to provide, have parking up there to do that. Library, I'm sure, would love to donate parking spots.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
So I want to table this because I wanted to try to come to some agreement with everybody on this number. But we can do that tonight if you guys want to. We don't have full membership, so I don't think I'd take a vote for the actual signing the grant. That has a couple more steps to take. But I need some direction to go back to him. And I think the next direction I want to take is have the subcommittee meet with John Grant and the principals over there and hash out some of the unit details and things of that nature. But I had it on there on Tuesday before I saw that meeting. So, because I know there's some appetite for, if we let go of all our money, what do we do with 25 Worcester Street? And to be frank,
You're asking for feedback. My thought is, I don't really like the idea of giving up all of our money, but you bring up really valid points. What other project can we look at that we can say this is actually going to be completed in 3 years?
Yeah.
There aren't any or if there are 2 units at 25 Worcester Street, which do we really want to sink our money into that? So, got to play the hand you're dealt. My only thing is, if we have a project in front of us with this GSX deal at Upton Street, I want to go to the CPC and ask for money.
yeah.
And,
Yep.
because,
I'd agree with that.
if we're going to, I know we're not going to lose all the money right up front, but they require projects. We can request money for a project. So I think we should do that with the indication that, like, hey, if we ever do have to move quickly, which I don't know what reality would actually happen, but if we do, we don't want to wait until a CPC funding process that could be 10 months in the future. We need to have some cash on hand.
So,
Another thing we talked about on Tuesday was the potential for a donation to the housing trust through the LIP process. So there's sidewalks, there's bus stops, there's connection to trails. There's all sorts of things you can ask for. The idea behind a 40B or a LIP is affordable housing. So that's also a potential. So there are ways that we can consider replenishing the trust's funds. The other thing is, Bruce mentioned the permits. So if we gave them a little bit of break on the permits, and potentially that would be less money that the trust would have to contribute as well. So I think, we can patch together, replenishment of the funds over time.
I share some of the concerns that you have. If we blow this whole thing on this, do we have any money? I mean, we still get $39,000-$40,000 a year from the reserve for CPA funds that are coming in. And having thought about it a little bit further with the other applicants that are in place, for us to say, go to the town and say, hey, we want some more money to replenish trust funds. Well, we had a big sum of money and it sat there for 15 years. So it's a hard argument to make that we need that money because we never really used it. But that being said, if we're putting this money in place because we know we can encumber the funds and not wait on town meeting or a CPC or the selectmen to make a decision or something like that, we can get the project started. And then when we try to recoup those funds, our argument is there. We have a select board representative. We can make a good argument and say, well, we want to recoup some of these funds, and this is what we're going to use them for. So if we bring in the mortgage assistance programs and stuff like that, that was echoed on Tuesday, that's something we can do internally when, you know, we have a affordable house that comes back on the market. You know, finding somebody that on that list that can go in there, we can start messing with that AMI. You know, we can start actually bringing people in that that need that down payment. So we can set up programs like that with the funds that are coming in, and you know, we can make that argument as the select board are trying to make the LIP agreement. Say, yeah, well, if they're going to make that much money, let's put some money back in the trust, and as we're turning over units, or if we want to provide some direct subsidy, or if we want to re-engage or need to re-engage the rental assistance program, we can actually fortify that program. And it was successful. We saved some people, but we can certainly put something in place that has some continuity to it. And we can start doing some of the operational trust work that we've never done in the past. So we can make some good arguments with what's out there now, and that we're not just asking the town for money. They're getting it from a development. So if we can think about that a little bit, I'm gonna have to post another meeting in 2 weeks because we can't extend the GSX stuff for too long. We are meeting with the CPC. I give the annual report to them. They have us in. That's at the end of the month. So I will bring it up. I don't think it's something that we can really say we want this money for this grant cycle, but I'll reach out to Joanne and see if there's time. But yes, I agree. Yeah, if we're putting this sizable amount of money in, I think there's going to be some problems on their end because, you know, other grant money needs to go in first. This is a grant that's staggered out over a couple of years. They traditionally sunset after 2 years for their articles, so there's some nuance to it that we're going to have to work through. But yeah, I don't say we just send the 1.8 million and say, see you later. We're still not actually to the hard part. So this is all the easy part. You know, there is a neighborhood up there. We are going to have some animosity there. We are going to have to show up to the town meetings, or rather the planning board meetings. We are going to have to work with them a little bit for the advocacy. And also importantly, we need to make sure that taking credit's not a good word for it, but we need to take credit for it. So in order to establish ourselves in town as a respectable board that's actually functioning properly and doing something that's beneficial, we need people to know it's beneficial. So we need to take advantage of our wins, especially seeing that we really haven't had one in like 20 years. So when we go to say we want Hudson, or we want to do some of these other more noble tasks, that we have that reputation. So and that's a good segue into something that's not on the agenda tonight, but we spoke about it quickly today, and we have some slides from Matt to talk about real quick, and then, you know, digest before our next meeting. So this concerns, you know, our messaging, Facebook, website, and stuff like that. So
Cool. Yeah, these slides are just for discussion. There's no action to take tonight, or anything we have to vote on, but I just thought, you know, a couple of meetings ago, I had asked for permission to kind of go engage with the town, come up with a little bit of a plan, for how we, undertake some public engagement, activities. So we met with, William Blake today, Dan, Bruce, myself, and just, basically, essentially the basis for the discussion was really what's in the housing production plan. So I just cut and pasted that, sent it off to William, and said, this is what we want to do. I don't want to recreate the wheel. I think it was a pretty comprehensive list of activities, and a great basis for what we could consider doing. So there's lots of words on here. I'm not going to read them all. This is the basis of the plan that I think we have to put together. As you can see, there's forums, summits, attendance at meetings, updates to the select board, CPC, organizing speakers to come to Grafton and talk about, you know, different things that are of interest for affordable housing, social media engagement, GCTV, updates to the town website, press releases, interviews, you know, that sort of stuff. So there's a lot to it. it's all in the production plan, and if anybody hasn't read that part of it, I'd suggest there's a lot more words in the actual plan. Just go look at it. But basically, this is the broad range of activities that they are saying the Grafton Affordable Housing Trust should be undertaking. So this is what we should be doing. I think we've had some individuals that are doing that, social media, posting on their own and whatnot, but there just hasn't been an active public engagement program from the trust that I can see, at least. So I think that's the basis that we would use to form a program. So any questions on that?
And more importantly, any volunteers to try to track this down?
Oh, I got a slide for that.
Oh, okay.
So I put down some of the things that I would suggest we could promote. So, in past achievements, we have the rental assistance program. I'm not sure if anybody in Grafton is aware of the fact that we kept families in their, residence during COVID. That's a really important activity. It's something that really wasn't promoted, but it's still very much relevant. We have had a lot of 40B developments. There's a lot that are actually in the housing production plan. There's a lot that have been delivered since then. We have added a considerable amount of affordable units through the 40B process. So I'd suggest that we just highlight, the work that's being done through 40B. There's the, work that we did with DCAM to acquire the property over in Pine Street, and then work with the developer to create a bunch of affordable units over there. I think, again, that's something that we should highlight. And again, these aren't necessarily things that are all done directly by the trust, but they're all, progress that we're making towards affordability in Grafton. We've got obviously a number of current initiatives. So GSX 25 Worcester, all the LIPs that are coming before the select board. So there's 3 right now. Those are all relevant. I think we should be profiling what affordable housing is. So there's lots of different types of affordable housing, from townhouses to apartments to single family homes and all that. And we should be showcasing that. We should be showing the people, profiling the people that actually live in our community in affordable units. There's lots of informational topics to just educate the public, and then there's some general advocacy that we could be doing, from how to participate in the lottery, what AMI means, what the goals of the housing trust are. A lot of what's in the housing production plan for economics, demographics, housing characteristics, all of that to get, again, just sort of general education. And then obviously some advocacy in terms of the benefits of affordable housing in Grafton, and there are many. So those are sort of the things that I thought about. Is there anything else that I've missed, or there's a lot there, but it may not be everything. Anyways, you can look at the slides. This was sort of, for me, the basis of what the program would consist of. In terms of the involvement and the different roles in the program, I think we definitely would have some participation from the town administrator's office. So it would be reviewing and issuing press releases, updating the town website. A lot of the data that's up there now is out of date. So one of the things that we need to do, I think, short term, is to just review and update what's up there currently. Through the Facebook and Twitter accounts of the town, we could have content going through there, just coordinating with William to do periodic updates. They've got a big audience, obviously, already, so that'd be a way that we could just tap into that channel of followers. And then there's we just approved through the with the select board, through the ARPA funding, a redevelopment of the town website. So part of that I'm asking for is potentially some content delegation. So I'd like to see the trust be able to have some ability to update its own content in its part of the web page, rather than have to put that through staff. So that's something that William's going to have to take back and discuss and whatnot. But I'd like some autonomy in terms of what we want to put up there, to just make sure that things are being updated on a timely basis.
Oh, just to
Sure.
dovetail on that, so I did talk to John Allen, he would call me back. EDC didn't actually go out and do it, that's all just piecemeal between members and staff.
Okay.
So he said that you had done some work on the EDC's website, posting videos, pictures,
Yeah,
and stuff like
so
that.
and we can update if there's anything on the Affordable Housing Trust page that, not that I want more tasks, but it is something we do have access to that. And if there's things that you guys want to have put up, certainly shoot me an email and we'll add it. I'm
Great.
happy to.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we need some place to sort of point people to for information. And right now, I wouldn't point people necessarily to the town website because what's up there just isn't very good. There's a lot there, but it's not particularly appealing. It doesn't have a flavor of advocacy. It just needs to be sort of modernized and updated. So that's some work that we need to do. Certainly, there's a role for trust members. I think just creating and publishing content for Facebook, and then working with the TA office for the various things. Potentially also coordinating, speakers and forums and that sort of stuff coordinated with the town as well. And then, I think we should discuss the potential for someone like MHP or another group to help work with us to do some of the public engagement tasks. So, they certainly could work on some of the forums and bringing speakers in, help solicit public input in various ways for the various developments that we'd be interested in. And anything else that we think might be appropriate. We could pay them to do a little bit of social media, to just say, put 2 posts up on general, affordable housing topics a month, which would be relatively inexpensive and would sort of keep the conversation alive in a way that I think would be really helpful to the trust. So those are what I was envisioning in terms of the roles. So in terms of opportunities for trust members, we need to create a Facebook page, I think. If the trust agrees that that's a good idea, I think it is. I'm sort of modeling what we might do off of what the Land Trust does, and they've got a few hundred users that are pretty dedicated to their cause, and they solicit volunteer, through their Facebook page. They do a lot of general and also town-specific posts on their pages and whatnot. So, but somebody would need to create it and create it in a way that we would allow 1 or 2 members from the trust to be able to post content. Obviously, we would need somebody to review content on Facebook.
Who manages the Land Trust Facebook page?
I think it's Rob Aberg, but I don't.
He's a trust member.
He's their chair, I believe, or president. I'm not sure exactly how they're organized. But yeah, he's. I think he's typically the one that does the post, and he posts probably, I don't know, a few times a month. And sometimes it's like what other area trusts are doing. So he posts a lot of times about the Upton have a pretty active land trust. And then he'll also highlight certain trails or certain properties that we have in town. He'll solicit volunteers because they're always looking for people to do trail maintenance and monitoring visits and that kind of stuff. So it's just it's a good way that's pretty, inexpensive and easy to use to kind of do public engagement. We are going to need somebody to review the current content on the town website and work with William or Chris to update the content. So that's definitely something that needs to be done. I'd love to see just some discovery on what other communities trusts are doing and in terms of their web pages, and for us to sort of model that on. With that website redevelopment that's happening, I'm sure that it's all going to be substantially reorganized, and I think it's an opportunity. That should be this year, by the way. So by the end of the year, we should be engaged in that process of doing the website redevelopment. So it's an opportunity for us to sort of look around and see what's being done that's could potentially be models for us in our new website or part of the website. I think it would benefit us to have an engagement calendar or program. So, you know, who's doing what are they doing, and when are they going to do it? So, just some type of basic calendar around, you know, how often do we want to be doing forums, you know, outreach meetings, Facebook posts, and who's going to do it. So, kind of roles and responsibilities, and just basically a calendar of activity. And then, so if we decide to use MHP for, you know, for any of this, well, maybe regardless, I think we should do a little bit of branding, and we really need to think about what our basic outlook is for how we want to approach the engagement program, and you know, how do we want to come across in terms of our identity as a trust? What's our basic perspective on affordable housing, and how are we going to present that to the public? That's something that I don't think we've really done, and I think it's really important. And partnering with someone like MHP, I think, would be really helpful, because they're just obviously good at it, and they've partnered with a lot of other trusts.
Just so I don't forget, we did get awarded this week. Came after I post the agenda, but I signed the award letter, so they should be reaching out shortly with kind of parameters of what they're going to provide to us, what we can ask them for. You know, when Laura was here, she had mentioned that list. So I don't recall this stuff being on there, but it's certainly something that I can ask and see if it's something that can provide somebody who can do some of this work.
That'd be great. I mean, I think you know, so let me just finish this. This is my last slide. Long term, I think it would be good to sort of nominate somebody on the trust, and maybe that's something we rotate, like the treasurer, you know, position, where we just have somebody who's responsible basically for keeping the program going and keeping on top of that calendar to make sure that we get those 3 or 4 posts a month out, and, you know, press releases on what's going on, and updating boards and committees, and, you know, sort of crawling through and looking at what meetings we might want to be attending, because that's something that, you know, we should be in attendance in some of the ZBA meetings, select board meetings, CPC. We should be more actively engaged with some of the other, you know, things in town that are impacting the trust.
Especially with the zoning, with the MBTA work and stuff like that too.
All of it.
Certainly something that,
Yep. So yeah, creating and publishing content, coordinating speakers, and then working with MHP. So those are sort of the things that I thought, you know, we need people to do on the trust. So I think the immediate things are probably getting somebody to kind of take a look at the Facebook, creating the Facebook page, and then looking at what's on the town website, and working with Blake to update it. I think those are the two sort of immediate things, and then as we decide how we're going to engage with MHP, working with them.
all set.
Yep, I am all set.
So one thing that Dan had mentioned when we spoke earlier, which I think is another important thing that kind of dovetails off of this. Do you want to mention what you had mentioned to us, or you want me to?
Sure. So, I think there's one. I think there's a few key differences between the land trust and us, and I think one big one is that they're not a municipal entity, so they're not under open meeting law, and I think there's kind of some value to that, and I think if there were affordable housing supporters separate from the trust who were sort of organizing themselves and supporting the projects that we are, you know, working for, I think that would be really helpful, especially for getting supporters into a planning board or CBA meeting, getting supporters to town meeting to vote, and I think having that a little bit separated from the trust would kind of give them more freedom and, in a way, kind of more sort of more grassroots legitimacy in that they're just regular residents of town, just like the ones who come to oppose stuff that we're working for. And so I'm not sure how much of that we could really be involved in, but if I was actually, after we talked, I was thinking about this a little more, and I think the Facebook stuff, I think would be a great way to kind of give people a place to find other supporters and interact with other supporters and kind of hopefully spark something like that. I think that would be a great benefit from this.
I mean, I've said it before here. You know, if you want to do something at town meeting, just bring 100 people with you. It's a time-honored tradition in this town. It's happened over and over again. You don't need to go to many to see an article where everybody gets up and leaves afterwards. That's the article that they were there for. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that approach to democracy. Advocacy groups are advocacy groups for a reason. We can foster that. I think it'd be helpful for us. For like independent meetings like ZBA and stuff, just having like 7 trust members in that actual room can typically diffuse a lot of situations that come up when there's 30 angry people moving a board to make decisions that are based on the 30 angry people and not necessarily what they should be deciding on. I mean, we've seen that in here. I think Bridget's first meeting, we had a wonderful meeting with 30 angry people. And it's hard to make decisions in that atmosphere. So to be able to call on a group of like-minded ideology, especially if they live in town, they're voters in town, and have skin in the game. So
Yeah, I think what can we actually do there? Either somebody on the trust resigns with the intention of doing that, or like individually we're gonna have to kind of like just reach into our networks and see like who would be willing to start something like that, because it's a valid point. Like, we are limited as a town entity. We if we're all in a Facebook page or whatever, we cannot discuss, we can't deliberate. I don't think. Maybe if it's a public page we can, but I really don't think we should be doing that. So I'd love for it to pop up, but I don't know how that's going to happen unless, like I said, I think everybody on the trust individually should talk about what they're doing and mention that this would be really helpful to have. I know there are probably some sympathetic existing groups on Facebook that perhaps could be asked about that. But yeah, it's a point well taken. I think what Matt's bringing up, like, it's kind of
we have to establish our
table
presence.
stakes.
So,
Like, we have to have the basic stuff, but when it's a town page, it's more like Q&A. Like, somebody posts a comment, we answer, and we're not gonna like have a debate with the Affordable Housing Trust account on Facebook. That's not gonna happen. So
Right.
Maybe we can post a midweek joke too. That's about it though. That's about it.
Housing themed joke.
I think
So that's something that has to be discussed, though. I mean, as we start to engage on social media as a trust, we've got to come up with some. There are some social media policies that the select board created, but we've got to discuss those norms, which is factual only and maybe just one response to a question, but we cannot be going back and forth on stuff because
active deliberation on it.
Ideally,
down point.
I would like to pay somebody to do this instead of relying on volunteers to potentially like be asked to do stuff during the workday. Like, I can't do this job. So
Sure.
if we
Still
have
working on that admin assistant position.
if we have an admin, can they do 1 hour a week on Facebook? I'm sure we can pay them. That's a pretty easy hour to be paid to do.
If we're shelling 20 a year to a position, there's at least 10 or 15 hours a week that we're going to get that's dedicated to us. So I'm sure that.
Yeah, you don't have anything to do, just monitor the Facebook.
I mean, for right now, I think we all agree Chris should probably be doing this. So
absolutely.
yeah, we should definitely. I mean, you're on hold all day with DHCD, so got your computer in front of you, you just get a Bluetooth, you'll be able to do this stuff while you're waiting for a response, so.
I think we do want some persistent content creation though, or ideas from the trust.
Yeah.
So, you know, we can pay somebody to post it
Yep.
and then sort of monitor comments and whatnot, but I think, you know, working with MHP, it might be a good opportunity to, you know, define what that kind of basic perspective is that we want to get out there. What's our message? And how are we going to approach the public with that message? And then just have some, you know, one or two individuals on the trust just constantly drip feed content through whoever does it, you know, MHP or our
So-
admin or whoever.
We talked, I brought a couple months ago now, maybe a year ago, that, you know, I wanted to see some of the positions, like treasurer, especially when we get to the point where we're overseeing bill traffic, and invoicing and stuff like that, and then the scribe position or clerk position and stuff like that. You know, rotating that instead of it being just a nominated position, we just set it up so it just rotates around. So
Yep.
everybody gets 6 months doing it. So you get each, you know, every member in their 2-year stint will have one of these positions. The chair, I think you need to, or actually organize, but.
Works for me. I mean, I think that
I don't wanna give
long-term
up the
role
chairmanship
is,
because
is one that could rotate. So I think the key is that, and I'll do this for the treasurer role. I'll just put together everything that I know about it. And, you know, maybe over the next meeting or two, I'll just pick somebody else and you're it.
So I guess what I can do in that regard is I'll put together the membership and the terms that are up in the service, and then I'll just like server monkey it almost. You know, I'll put everybody in a particular spot for when it's their turn to handle a particular function, and then just rotate it through.
Well, I mean, let's put this on the agenda for 2 weeks too,
Yeah.
so
I'll do that.
everybody can review all the detail that Matt put in the presentation, and then maybe the agenda item is like discuss and then assign certain responsibilities.
Okay.
Or, you know, volunteer for certain.
Then we can have something we can take action on when it's in our
Yep.
items. Who do we have in participation tonight?
There's a Jakubiak.
Okay, that's it. I saw 6 participants. Was that people in here that were also in it too?
Yeah, some people have left. Yep.
Okay. Did you see who was in? Is there anybody in particular? Did you recognize any names?
I believe Bill Yeomans was in attendance, and I didn't. That was the only one that I recognized.
Okay. Nobody had any comments or any hands
No.
up or anything like that. So I actually didn't see it there. Okay. Well, it's 9:30. I don't think any.
Yeah.
Oh, Chris
I
has
do have-
something.
I do have one quick comment as we're talking about topics just to throw on the trust's radar. So March of next year, so a year from now, will be the expiration of our current housing production plan. So early in the fall, probably maybe end of summer, I'll be coming before the trust and asking for money for updating the housing production plan. I believe the trust funded the previous update.
Yeah, we had our consultant to draft it.
Okay.
That's what I had planned on doing.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah, I know we're still a ways out, but I just wanted to.
Yeah. So I reached out to I can't remember her name. Danny. You looked it up for me once
Karen
today already.
Thunderborg.
Thank you. I sent an email off today.
Oh.
So hopefully she'll respond back, and then because she's going to book that far out.
Oh, perfect.
So, have you drafted one before, or
Yes.
okay? Not that I don't, you know, it would save some money if you were doing some of it, but she's already done one, so I think it'd be real easy for her to do the updates.
Yep.
So I'll put that on our next agenda too, just so we're cognizant of it. And that keeps us certified, and then that has to be approved by the select board too.
Yes. Yep. And those are 5-year periods that it's.
So it should take into account the last census data too, which would be good to update our actual housing counts and stuff
Yep.
like that. So, okay. Brittany, do you have anything out there before we wrap up? All right, good. So, I will plan a meeting probably in 2 weeks. I'll send something out to make sure everybody can go, but I think it will take about that long. But I don't want to wait all the way to our next meeting next month before we're talking about the GSX. We need to come to a decision. So, if anybody else doesn't have anything, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call. Brittany,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
Bruce is an aye. We are adjourned. Thank you everybody for coming.